Well, look, it's very constructive. I think, as I said, the president has a very positive working relationship with President Xi, and obviously the relationship I have with the foreign minister should reflect that. So we acknowledged, there are some issues that are going to be, we have to work through, not just beyond trade, but others. But I thought it was a very constructive and positive meeting and gave us a lot to work on. So that was our message, was the opportunity here to achieve some strategic stability and identify areas where we can cooperate together on and build better communications and working trust. It is the first time that I met my counterpart in person. At the end of the day, look, no matter what, the United States and China have to have relations, we have to have communication, we have to be able to interact with one another, and it's just impossible for the foreign ministers of our respective countries to not engage in conversation. So I'm glad we had that meeting today. There's a lot of work to be done. No one's saying it's easy, but we do have some opportunities on some things we might be able to work on.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi in Kuala Lumpur amid rising regional tensions. It's the first face-to-face meeting between the two since Trump returned to office and Rubio took the top diplomat role. The talks come as the U.S. and China clash over tariffs, Taiwan, and influence in the Indo-Pacific region. Marco Rubio and Wang Yi are in Kuala Lumpur for a meeting of foreign ministers from the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN. The two diplomats held nearly an hour of closed-door talks as both powers seek to shape the future of Asia. Rubio's trip marks his first to Asia as Secretary of State, signaling a renewed U.S. focus on the Indo-Pacific region. But that agenda is clouded by new U.S. tariffs, some as high as 40%, slapped on several Asian allies this week. Tariffs hit Japan, South Korea, and Malaysia with 25% and go as high as 40% on Myanmar and Laos. Beijing has also threatened to retaliate against nations that strike deals with the United States to cut China out of supply chains. Marco Rubio said there is a high probability of a meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping soon, though no date has been set yet.
Mr. Secretary, you met your Chinese counterpart earlier today. The President has said just a couple of days ago that he enjoys good relations with China and the Chinese President. At your meeting, is that the sense you get? That you have good relations?
It was a very
with
constructive
China?
meeting. Obviously, look, we're two big, powerful countries, and there are always going to be issues that we disagree on. I think there's some areas of potential cooperation. I thought it was a very constructive, positive meeting, and a lot of work to do. He's absolutely right that the President has a very good relationship with President Xi. It tracks back to his first term. And, obviously there are some issues we're going to have to work through, and that's to be expected with countries of our size and scope and influence in the world, two global powers such as the United States and China. But I thought it was a very constructive and positive meeting and gave us some things we can work on together.
What's your message to the foreign minister in the meeting?
Which foreign minister? Every meeting that I've had is with a foreign minister. Oh, well, look, it's very constructive. I think, as I said, the president has a very positive working relationship with President Xi, and obviously the relationship I have with the foreign minister should reflect that. So we acknowledged, there are some issues that are going to be, we have to work through, not just beyond trade, but others. But I thought it was a very constructive and positive meeting and gave us a lot to work on. So that was our message, was the opportunity here to achieve some strategic stability and identify areas where we can cooperate together on and build better communications and working trust.
What are the odds of a meeting?
The what?
What are some of those areas of cooperation? The administration hasn't spelled those out yet. So.
Well, we're going to work through those. We're not having any announcement for you right now. But it was a very constructive meeting. I think we left it feeling as there's some areas we're going to be able to work together on, and obviously, as we work through those, and we do that in conjunction with the Chinese side, we'll make public announcements. The last interaction of our trade representatives was quite positive, and we can build on that and other areas of potential cooperation.
What are the odds for a meeting or the outlook for a meeting? We know President Trump has expressed interest in a meeting with President Xi this year, and President Xi has reciprocated with an invitation to China for the President and First Lady. What's the outlook, or what are the odds of a meeting happening this year after your initial?
Yeah, no, the odds are high. I think both sides want to see it happen. Obviously, we have to build the right atmosphere and the right deliverables so that a visit isn't just a visit, but it actually has some takeaways from it that are concrete. But there's a strong desire on both sides to do it. The president wants to do it. The Chinese side wants to see it happen. President Xi said that publicly. So I think the odds are high. I don't have a date for you, but I think it's coming. It'll happen.
Mr. Secretary, what do you say to those who make the argument that the U.S. tariffs or the threat of those tariffs in the region actually creates an opening for China to be seen as the stable economic partner here?
I don't agree with that assessment. I mean, look, at the end of the day, the United States has built these tremendous trade imbalances over the last 30 or 40 years. It's unfair to American and American workers and American, in addition to threaten our industrial capacity. Trade needed to be revisited. The president campaigned on that, and that's what he's doing, and he's resetting it on a global scale. At the end of the day, look, I think countries are going to trade with multiple countries. We don't view this as an opening for anyone. We don't view it that way. We view it as an opportunity to reset global trade in a way that's fair for Americans after 2 or 3 decades of unfairness. If you look at some of these trade deficits, they're massive. They're massive. That has to be addressed. And that's not sustainable at the current direction it had gone. This should have been done a long time ago. President Trump's finally done it. And I think countries understand that this was different. If this was us targeting 10 countries or 5 countries, then I would understand why countries would be upset. But the truth of the matter is we're resetting tariff levels with virtually every country in the world. And so I understand if you had a deal where you were running these huge trade deficits with the United States and exporting a lot to the U.S. and built your economy around exports, but had very little import or very little economic activity coming in from the United States, I understand why you don't want that to change. But I think most mature leaders, and everybody here is a mature leader, understands that that's not a sustainable dynamic. It was one that had to be changed, and that's what the president's doing. So we're going to be okay.
So can you talked about points of possible cooperation with the Chinese, but on the points which were well known of contention, did you get a sense that there was a willingness of the Chinese to move, or are they just...
Well, I wouldn't look, today's meeting with our Chinese counterparts was not a negotiation on any of these matters. It is the first time that I met my counterpart in person, who, by the way, happens to also be the National Security Advisor, so he's not the archivist, though, but I suggested that perhaps he asked for that title, and that way we'd be equal. But
that's a lot bigger job than archivist.
Well, they have 5,000 years of archives, too, so, you know, but I would say that it was very positive a very positive interaction, and constructive is the most important part. At the end of the day, look, no matter what, the United States and China have to have relations. We have to have communication. We have to be able to interact with one another. And it's just impossible for the foreign ministers of our respective countries to not engage in conversation. So I'm glad we had that meeting today. There's a lot of work to be done. No one's saying it's easy, but we do have some opportunities on some things we might be able to work on to begin to build some momentum in our relationship. I thought it was a very good meeting. I really felt encouraged by it. But look, there's work to be done.
Secretary, if I can ask a follow-up question. You mentioned that you see high odds of a meeting between the presidents of the U.S. and China. There's a big Chinese military parade happening scheduled for September 3rd. Did the Chinese foreign minister extend an invitation to that? Was that discussed as a potential opportunity?
No, we didn't discuss any specific date in mind in that regard. But the reason why I tell you there's a high probability they're going to meet is that they both want to meet. And I don't know President Xi, but I know President Trump, and you know, I can tell you that he's committed to having that meeting happen. So the reason why I think there's high odds of it happening is they both want it to happen. So I'm sure we'll work on a date and find a mutually acceptable date for both sides. And I'm pretty confident. We want it to be a good meeting, and we're going to work hard between now and whatever date that is to make sure that when that visit does happen, it's as productive as possible.